Following a 3-week summer break, Formula One returned with drama, and this time drama between two F1 champions, as two-time Formula One champion Fernando Alonso, who was in the news throughout the summer break, was embittered by 7-time Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, going so far as to insult the British driver on the radio. Nonetheless, Lewis Hamilton has now returned the favour by responding to the Aston Martin-bound driver. What exactly happened between Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton? What was the Spaniard's response to the British driver? What was the response of the 7-time F1 champion to the 2-time champion? Formula One is a sport wherein drivers would claim mutual respect for one another while still throwing jabs at one another, and this weekend's race at the 2022 Belgian Grand Prix was no exception. Ahead of the Sunday race, several cars on the grid were given grid penalties due to the installation of new power units and gearboxes ahead of the final 9 races of the F1 season, and as a result, Alpine's Fernando Alonso found himself P3, while Lewis Hamilton was unable to capitalise on Max Verstappen's misfortune to secure pole position for the first time this season, and thereby found himself P4. Nonetheless, on the first lap, both drivers battled for P2 ahead of Red Bull's Sergio Perez, and as they approached the Les Combes chicane, Hamilton tried to go around the outside of Alonso and both drivers collided, with the Alpine's driver's front wing smashing into the Mercedes driver's rear right tyre, sending Hamilton's W13 flying onto the tarmac. Hamilton, however, chose to continue despite the damage, but was forced to retire near Blanchimont after the Mercedes team advised him to do so, following the damage the W13 suffered. However, Fernando Alonso, who was able to finish the race despite the collision, was disgusted with his former McLaren teammate and launched a verbal attack on the team radio, calling the 7-time F1 champion an idiot who didn't know how to start a race unless he was ahead. What an idiot, closing the door from the outside. I mean, we had a mega start, but this guy only knows how to drive and start in first, Alonso fumed on the radio. Nonetheless, after the race, Hamilton chose to accept responsibility for the crash, claiming that Alonso was in his blind spot and that he did not give him enough space, resulting in the collision. Looking back at my footage, he was in my blind spot. I didn't leave him enough space. It's my fault today. Just so sorry to the team. It doesn't really matter, he said that. I don't really care. It was my fault. I couldn't see him actually. He was right in my blind spot. Just recuperate, get back on the treadmill, Hamilton said. Alonso, who finished 6th but was promoted to 5th after Ferrari's Charles Leclerc was penalised, stated that he was surprised that Hamilton claimed full responsibility for the incident, but he also admitted that the corner was tricky and as such it was bound to happen, as it had in the past for Hamilton. It was a lap 1 incident, nothing really to say there. The stewards, they didn't say anything because these things happen, especially in that corner. It happened in the past, I remember also with Lewis and former Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg in 2014. It's a tricky corner, Alonso said. Unfortunately, Lewis Hamilton was made aware of Alonso's remarks at the end of the race, and he initially appeared unconcerned during his post-race press conference, stating once again that he accepts responsibility for what occurred. I don't really have a response to it, Hamilton, who took responsibility for the crash, said. I know how things feel in the heat of the moment, but it's nice to know how he feels about me. It's better that it's out in the open how he feels and, like I said, it wasn't intentional and I take responsibility for it. That's what adults do, said Hamilton. However, the 37-year-old driver later appeared to have taken the insult poorly, as he openly stated that he would not be reaching out to the 41-year-old driver as planned due to Alonso's rude comment. I mean, I would have spoken about it with Alonso until I heard what he said, so it's unfortunate. I mean, it's motor racing. I gave it everything. I tried to overtake on the outside into turn 5. Just didn't leave quite enough space and I paid the price for it. It wasn't intentional, it just happened, said Hamilton. Regardless, Fernando Alonso chose to blame his comment on the heat of the moment, claiming that he was frustrated, hence the nasty comment against Hamilton. I was frustrated in that moment for sure. Every time we start in the first row, second row, or we are fighting top 2, top 3, there is something going on. And yeah, I was frustrated, but luckily my car was very strong and nothing happened. I could continue. Lewis did not have that luck and had to retire the car, Alonso said. Toto Wolff, Mercedes team principal, however, chimed in on the jabs, defending Hamilton against the "this guy only knows how to drive and start in first" remark, saying that Hamilton's 7 championships should be proof that he doesn't always need to start at the front of the grid at every race. Well, Lewis has started in the front a lot. He's won 7 world championships, so the strategy worked, Wolff said. Truth be told, Alonso appears to be not the only one who was dissatisfied with Lewis Hamilton's performance this weekend, as there have been reports that the FIA was upset that the British driver refused to visit the medical centre after the crash as required, and as a result, he was issued a warning. The stewards received a report from the race director that driver Hamilton refused to visit the event medical service following his crash on lap 1, where the medical warning light threshold was exceeded, and only did so after the race director informed the team that further action could be taken if he did not. This is not the first time this season that drivers, not Hamilton, have initially refused to go for a medical check. The stewards issue a warning in this case, with a reminder to all drivers that stronger action may be taken in the future, the stewards' report reads. Regardless of these incidents, the Silver Arrows were not completely at a loss at the Belgian Grand Prix, as George Russell, who started 5th on the grid, finished 4th, passing Charles Leclerc and finished just over 2 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. However, there are serious concerns that Lewis Hamilton is becoming increasingly frustrated with the German manufacturer and its W13, as he was reported to have stayed behind at the track past midnight to try and work out some of the W13's issues, all of which appeared to be a waste of time after the crash. During qualifying, Hamilton claimed that the W13 felt like dragging a parachute behind him, and Wolff was also perplexed by their performance, going so far as to call it the worst qualifying session he has had in 10 years, while admitting that it was draggy when he said, "If we would understand, then we could tune it, but the car is draggy on a straight line." Lewis said it's like dragging a parachute behind him. "It is unstable in the rear, it understeers through 8 and 9, it bounces through the high speed and gives no confidence. There is not a positive I heard about how the car performs this weekend." Nonetheless, Wolff admitted that, like Hamilton, he is becoming increasingly frustrated with the W13, but while the team is looking to improve next year's designs to avoid making a similar mistake, they still have to finish the remaining 9 races with the 2022 car while determining what changes are required. "I think it's clear the reaction from Lewis. The car was undrivable yesterday. It's clear that our drivers don't want anything to do with this car anymore. We need to find the right compromise because we're still trying to find out what is happening and then next year's development. We are lacking the answers. You cannot have a car that's on pole in Budapest, albeit a very different track and different conditions, and then suddenly be almost 2 seconds off. So we need to look into data, dig deep, and find out," Wolff said. Wolff also admitted that finishing 2nd or 3rd in the Constructors' Championship makes little to no difference to him because he would rather produce the best race result every week to instill confidence in his drivers, including the 7th-time F1 champion, who has yet to win a race this season and is currently 24 points behind teammate George Russell and 138 points behind Max Verstappen in the drivers' standings. Nevertheless, while we know Lewis Hamilton has nothing else to prove, we will be hoping that the 37-year-old driver will finally win a race this season, putting to rest the criticism that he only performs well in the best cars. What are your thoughts on the incident involving Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton? Do you believe it was the emotion of the moment? Or do you believe it was an accurate portrayal of the British driver? What are your thoughts on the W13? Do you believe Mercedes is still capable of winning a race in 2022? Let us know in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, the next video on your screen is worth your time.